Hey, everyone. Hey, Nindi, thank you for organizing the event. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to do the exact opposite of Giacomo. My presentation is way too long, and I have no time to talk about myself. But I'm pretty sure most people here kind of know who I am. If not, you know what to do with just the name and the internet. All right. So I was doing a presentation most of last year around the world, and this was my last slide in that presentation. I could never get to it. So I decided to just build a whole presentation around one slide, and now this presentation is getting too long, so I'm going to have to pick one slide in this presentation and build a presentation around that. And the title of this presentation is Bitcoin, There Will Be Only One. Other presentations had like similar themes. That's from Highlander. And this is my attempt to categorize the shitcoin space with a four-way Venn diagram. I really wanted to do it with 3 parts, but I had to go to 4. I'm considering whether to add a 5th of merge mining, but I haven't gotten there yet. And this is what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to pick on some of them. There's infinitely many we can pick on, but these are just the ones that I randomly selected. Before we do that, I usually like to remind people about Bitcoin and what it is. Different crowds. Some crowds are know less about Bitcoin and blockchain, or whether they're even the same thing or not. And other crowds are more inclined. So this is one of those crowds where this part is going to be very, very quick. I always like to read this passage from the first page of the white paper. Digital signatures provide part of the solution, but the main benefits are lost if a trusted third party is still required to prevent double spending. We propose a solution to the double spending problem using a peer-to-peer network. The network timestamps transactions by hashing them into an ongoing chain of hash-based proof of work, forming a record that cannot be changed without redoing the proof of work. So this is a way that I remind people as to what did Satoshi actually invent. And he did not invent the blockchain. He invented a way to solve double spending in computer science with proof of work. In order to achieve this, he relied on several pieces of work prior to that. One of them is sitting right there, Mr. Adam Back, and Hashcash. And Mr. Stornetta is referenced 4 times here. His name is not on the one that's in number 2, but he was a part of that research as well. So what did that give us? That gave us proof of work, and I am going to be referencing many passages from the book, The Bitcoin Standard. In a minute, I will have to apologize to Dominic Frisby, who has written a very similar book several years before that, but slightly before my time, or just as I was entering the space. So where does the word blockchain come from? The word blockchain came from Satoshi's code file in a comment where it says when they solve proof of work, they broadcast the block to everyone, and the block is added to the blockchain. There's a whole presentation about time chains by Giacomo Zucco, and that was something that Satoshi was going to name. Basically, that word is not important at all. It's just that people had to scam for money in their projects, and we'll get to that later. So proof of work, what does that mean? This is where I'm going to be referencing really good passages from the book. It just sounds more credible than when I used to say it before the book even came out. A lot of people accuse proof of work as being terrible for the environment, and it's not scalable, and all this mining, how is it going to work? Great passage on page 218 in a footnote. It says, the question of whether Bitcoin wastes electricity is at its heart a misunderstanding of the fundamentally subjective nature of value. Electricity is generated worldwide in large quantities to satisfy the needs of consumers. The only judgment about whether this electricity has gone to waste or not lies with the consumer who pays for it. People who are willing to pay the cost of the operating the Bitcoin network for their transactions are effectively financing this electricity consumption, which means the electricity is being produced to satisfy consumer needs and has not been wasted. Functionally speaking, proof of work is the only method humans have invented for creating digital hard money. If people find that worth paying for, the electricity has not been wasted. I don't understand why people just don't understand that, but this is the capitalist model. So for the last, probably since 2011, everyone has been able to instantly come up with a better Bitcoin by simply changing a line of code. And this is where I like to remind people of a little email exchange that took place in 2001. Not going to read the whole thing, just the last part. Personally, I like the idea of Hashcash, if and only if it's structured like a real currency, as opposed to simply proof of work. In the real world, you pay for resources used. In many cases, this should also apply to peer-to-peer and other computer systems. Of course, getting Hashcash workable as a real currency is extremely difficult. I've thought of a scheme that would work. Coins are signed by owner and can only be changed, signed to a different owner by the owner. Except you need a decentralized central database of all the Hashcash that's been minted. Unworkable. Shit. Spend twice problem. Now, was that word shit or something else? Because the person who wrote that is sitting in the back row. This was the 15-year-old Peter Todd in an email conversation with Hal Finney. Okay? So, Nearly 16, all right. So this is what Peter in the back there was doing on a Saturday afternoon at the age of 15. So, yeah. So Peter, what was the what four-letter word did you mean there? So, okay. So my point here is this, right? When people when people come out and say, "Hey, I solved it. I solved the problem. I'm releasing a new Bitcoin." What you have to realize is people have been trying to create Bitcoin for a really long time. And most of the stuff that other people have come up with, as was mentioned earlier today, it's been thought of like proof of stake long ago, and it had been, shown to be useless. And Bitcoin came about as the conclusion to everything that could actually work. And that's how Bitcoin came about. So the next time some developer comes out and says, "I solved the problem," ask him what he was doing at the age of 15, and if he was already working on trying to solve this problem. All right, so a few words about hard money, also mentioned earlier today. Again, going back to the Bitcoin standard real quick. Hard money, by taking the question out of supply, out of the hands of governments and their economists, would force everyone to be productive to society instead of seeking to get rich through the fool's errand of monetary manipulation. International economic summits are convened where world leaders try to negotiate each other's acceptable currency devaluation, making the value of the currency an issue of geopolitical importance. For every other money, as its value rises, those who can produce it will start producing more of it, whether it's rice stones, seashells, silver, gold, copper, or government money. Everyone will incentivize to produce more. Bitcoin is the hardest money ever invented. Growth in its value cannot possibly increase its supply. It can only make the network more secure and immune to attack. And this makes Bitcoin fundamentally different than every other money. So Satoshi realized that by solving proof of work and giving Bitcoin a finite amount, it would create hard money. And he knew this from the beginning, where he said the nature of Bitcoin is such that once version 0.1 was released, the core design was set in stone for the rest of its lifetime. And I still don't understand how people think you can just easily go ahead and hard fork Bitcoin and get everyone to agree on a change. The immutability is not a feature of the Bitcoin software, which is trivial to change for anyone with coding skills, but rather is grounded in the economics of the currency and network and stems from the difficulty of getting every member of the network to adopt the same change to the software. So that's the background on Bitcoin and how useful it is. Now, let's dive into some of the projects and companies that think they are actually competing in this space. And we're going to go with the most popular one, maybe still, and that is Litecoin. Charlie Lee's tweet from a while back, 2015. Litecoin is the silver to Bitcoin's gold. It must be true since it's written in the Bitcoin blockchain. Okay, so that is why it's the silver. I like the first comment that showed up on my Twitter. If true, if Bitcoin is gold, then Monero becomes platinum. We'll get to Monero in a minute. Charlie Lee actually elaborated. Bitcoin is gold, Litecoin is silver, and XRP are diamonds. So I was actually curious what this meant. Unfortunately, I have to agree with Charlie, and he elaborated. For Mr. Lee, the extreme centralization of XRP makes him share specific characteristics with the diamond market. For all, centralization allows for some manipulation. Charlie also commented that holding Ripple is good news for fiat lovers. And I decided to look up the price of diamonds and put it side by side with the price of Ripple. And the similarity was certainly there. So that was some really, really good research. I really feel sorry for the man who had to buy a diamond in the late 70s. Yes. So let's move on. So there are several reasons why Litecoin is not going to succeed. Here's the simplest one. Once again, we go to the Bitcoin standard. But in the 19th century, however, the development of modern banking and the improvement in methods of communication, individuals could transact with paper money and checks backed by gold in the treasuries of their banks and central banks. This made gold-backed transactions possible at any scale, thus obviating the need for silver's monetary role and gathering all essential monetary salability properties in the gold standard. Basically, gold doesn't need silver in the world of modern banking because gold can scale, because no one is going to be walking around with grams of gold, even on the gold standard. No one is going to do that. So gold became infinitely divisible with modern technology, and that is exactly what Bitcoin is doing with the Lightning Network. So therefore, no silver to Bitcoin's gold. Sorry. Some people saw it very, very early. Luke Dash Jr. explained why Litecoin is a scam back in 2013 because they made 3 irrelevant changes. They changed SHA-256 to script. They created a faster block time, which isn't really faster, it's just less secure, so you need a lot more confirmations. And they created a larger currency supply, which is just inflation on top of Bitcoin, even though we have more millibitcoin than total supply of Litecoin. Let's move on to another one. Let's move on to Monero, because they're always claiming that you need privacy and that privacy has to be on the protocol. Giacomo explained in his presentation right before this one as to the trade-offs that come with that. But the point is you need sufficient privacy that people will actually use. And you're not going to get everyone to move their Bitcoin into Monero or another privacy coin. So these are all the privacy tools that we have. Even, we don't have all of them yet, but this is everything that is coming. So I find it very difficult to imagine that Bitcoin is not going to have sufficient privacy. So again, the store of value property of Monero is non-existent, and no one is really going to be using it for transactions once Bitcoin is fully fungible, and that is coming sooner than later. Really like this tweet. It happened literally, what, a day ago, 2 days ago? from Ragnar, where he wrote, "You either die a cypherpunk hero or you live long enough to start a shitcoin." And this refers to David Schaum's effort to, unfortunately, create a shitcoin. And once again, on the next slide, I do have to thank Giacomo Zucco for giving me an idea to make a slide out of this. And it goes something like this. Oh my God, I just coded the greatest privacy encryption protocol of all time. And the first question you have to ask is, but is it backwards compatible with Bitcoin? Can it be implemented as a soft fork? Probably Lukasz Jr. is the first person to ask. And you have two answers here. If the answer is yes, and it's a really, really good thing, then it will be implemented. I keep asking Adam back, like, have you seen anything in the altcoin space that is worthy of being put into Bitcoin that is doable? And the answer seems to always be no. But if your amazing piece of code is not backwards compatible with Bitcoin, you have to figure out, well, has someone already built a shitcoin out of it? Because if they haven't, you are going to try and do it, because that has to be the end result. And the reason, and just a quick story as to how this slide came about, Giacomo sparked the idea in my head saying that prior to Bitcoin, anyone that had an interesting line of code would just treat it as an interesting line of code, and other researchers and other things like we'll try to encrypt some messages, this, and that. But now, because of Satoshi and Bitcoin, any line of code is now, how do I make money on it? How can I monetize it? I know, I will turn the line of code into money. And Bitcoin, that's what Bitcoin created. It basically gave people the opportunity to attempt to monetize a line of code, whether it's a line of code and encryption or a line of something else, but you monetize it by literally printing your own money, and that is why everything else that gets created happens to be a shitcoin. I know I'm running out of time, and I have like 40 more to go. I will try to go through them quick, and I added a bunch of slides this afternoon. That's what happens when I come to an event early. And so I don't really read all that, but I remember this skit by George Carlin where he talked about religious institutions. I think I have to read it. Religion has actually convinced people that there is an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do every minute of every day. And he has a list of the 10 things he doesn't want you to do. And if you do them, he has a place for you with fire and smoke and torture and all the rest forever and ever and ever. But he loves you. He loves you, and he needs money. Okay? Same thing with all of these altcoin projects. They love you. They can change the world, but they need money. And what happens when they don't have money? Well, if they can't easily create money for themselves, they will take it in some other form, which brings us to Zcash, who I don't know if they honestly believed it, and they thought that 4 years worth of money would be enough for them, but guess what? 4 years is almost up. And what happens when you have no more money to pay your developers and sponsor conferences and promote your money? You have to come up with a way to get more money. Okay, and this is the religion of Zcash because they need more money and they need a new developer fund. All right, so where should we go next? How about we're going to stick with privacy coins for 200, though no one is talking about this one anymore, and that is Dash. Originally Xcoin, then Darkcoin, then Dash Pay, and soon to be I covered it on my episode of Crypto Scam. Fluffy Pony gave it a shot to talk about why Dash is bad, but basically you just create 20% of the supply in the first hour of creation, and you keep all that, and then you have a vote, and you decide that that's a good thing, that you get to keep it. It was a for-profit venture from the start, lots of evidence for that, so you're basically, once again, printing your own money. What do we go to next? Let's go over to printing your own money and convince content creators that that is a good thing. And this brings us to Steemit, Dan Larimer's scam number 3, right? It's debatable. He really obfuscated his first two. They're very, very similar. So either scam number 2 or scam number 3. And this was a very popular tweet going into Mount Stupid. Oh, I got these backwards. OK. Wait, let me go to this one. That white paper was a thing of beauty. Just going to read a couple of parts from it. Because everyone benefits, everyone should pay. In other words, no individual user should be expected to pay for anything, but instead should be paid for everything they do that brings value to Steam. That was in the white paper. And this one is actually a better one. Furthermore, Steam pays people to figure out who should be paid. This kind of thinking is revolutionary. In the white paper. I wonder who else read it. Really, really amazing. All right, where to next? The ICOs. Oh, wait a minute. I never even talked about the Venn diagram. We have proof of work coins. We have proof of stake coins, proof of importance, proof of other, proof of God knows what. We have the ICOs and the airdrops. And then we have the blockchains. These are your databases. And of course, they overlap. Like the databases like R3 and Hyperledger don't have a token. So they're outside of everything else that has a token. And then you have something like, these are your proof of work coins. These are on the border because they're proof of work coins with a component of either a developer subsidy from the miners, or in the case of Dash and Instamine. These are your straight up ICOs. This is the scammiest bucket because this is a ICO that goes immediately into proof of stake. I don't know how you get any scammier than that. Like at least Steam had mining for a month, and then they went to proof of stake. And they still claim they're a hybrid because 1 or 1/4% of every block is actually mined. So technically, they're a hybrid. So a proof of stake and proof of work hybrid isn't like 50-50. As long as there is like a fraction of your reward every block is mined, that's enough to be a hybrid. So yeah, so anyway, it gets really interesting. Ethereum and EOS are slightly different because one has everything. I mean, Larimer really went at it with this last one. He wanted everything, proof of stake and, well, actually, I'm sorry, not mining. That one was never mined. Proof of stake and an ICO, and it's a database layer. At least Ethereum is still in the proof of work bucket. It's not, and in the ICO bucket, and in the database bucket, but at least it's not yet in the proof of stake or proof of something bucket. All right. If you did an ICO, good luck. This is the SEC trying to go after Reggie Middleton, who I interviewed 2 years ago and pretty much explained everything that is happening to him right now. But you have to do an ICO. Rootstock. Sorry for your loss, guys. You didn't see the Liquid network coming, the Liquid sidechain. Too bad. Nice try, though. I'm not going to spend much time on that. Ripple. Oh, my ongoing battle with Ripple's army of the brain dead. So, like I really thought Game of Thrones had left us, but clearly not. And go back, watch my show with Peter Todd from like 3 years ago, though it's even scammier now. And of course, going back to George Carlin, this is how I think of the Ripple army. And never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups, though I've never actually met Ripple people in large or small groups. Of all the conferences I go to, I still have never seen anyone that is part of the Ripple army in person and in the flesh. But the same thing could also be applied to the recent, I'm going to skip right to this slide of what is happening in Japan right now at the Ethereum conference is really a thing of beauty. So now I'm going to slide. We all know they can't scale. Again, I have videos on them not scaling. going back a while. This was a video I tried to make like 3 years ago, but I finally got some people to actually talk about them not scaling, Stop and Decrypt and Jameson Lopp. Their leaders have admitted that we knew it wasn't going to scale. Perfect. Good luck with that. And we're going to end this presentation with a tweet from, once again, Giacomo Zucco. Bitcoin maximalism, also known as moderate common sense, that Bitcoin could succeed, maybe, and it's in the middle of the spectrum. The other two extremes are the no-coiner, Bitcoin cannot exist. This is your Nouriel Roubini. And the multi-coiner extreme, Bitcoin is infinitely replicatable, that my clone is best. This could have been Vitalik. This could have also been Roger Ver. Ironically, I will be on stage with both Nouriel and Roger Ver on a panel in 3 days. Lord help me. That is it, guys. We could talk about a lot more coins, but I only have so much time. And this is my presentation as to why Bitcoin will be the only one standing. Thank you so much.
Questions?
Thank you. I'd just like to ask for more fun. What about green? You never commented it.
Yeah, again, I can't put them all in there. I mean, green falls into the same bucket. It goes right into that slide. Like, it's an interesting piece of code. It's a great piece of encryption code that, unfortunately, for that piece of encryption code, it cannot be backwards compatible with Bitcoin. It can't be added as a soft fork. And therefore, the only option Grin has is to use Mimblewimble. That's the piece of code. The only option it has is to create a shitcoin. It's unfortunate. I hear it's a good piece of code, but you can't add it into Bitcoin, and therefore, sooner or later, someone's going to try to make money on it by creating an altcoin. Like, whoever gets to it first gets more money. Like, it really is. It was really that simple. It's just unfortunate.
How was in Georgia? How was in Georgia?
Oh, Georgia's awesome. I love Georgia. It was great. Yeah, I shouldn't talk about it too much. Then, like, I won't be able to go there anymore and enjoy peace and quiet. Yeah. About? Tether. You know, Tether is very, very interesting. I think the one thing I find most interesting about Tether is that they openly admitted that it's only 75% backed by dollars, and no one cared. And like, it's still worth dollar for dollar, right? And I had an interesting conversation. I forgot with who. It might have been Johnny Dilly. I really forgot who the conversation was with. And like, so many exchanges, because a lot of these exchanges that use Tether, like let's be honest, like, I know Kraken has Tether on it, but Kraken has a bank account. So Kraken, like, lets you actually trade Tether because they'll just profit from a fee to let you trade Tether. Kraken doesn't need Tether. But a lot of exchanges need Tether because they're operating in an unregulated space. So they can't provide you a bank account. They can't provide you whether it's dollars or euros. So they're so dependent on Tether that even if the US government takes down Bitfinex and the whole Tether company, basically those exchanges that are already operating in an unregulated space can just say, well, great, now no one else will get to print Tether. It becomes a stable coin. We all agree that 1 Tether equals 1 Bitcoin, and we keep our operation going, right? So, like, it's no different than the US dollar, really. It's just, it's become almost too big to fail until it eventually fails. The question is, what happens when Tether fails? And I think it will raise the price of Bitcoin. Because as Tether is failing, somebody always knows. Some people always know it's about to fail. And those that know will immediately dump whatever Tether they have. Some exchange is going to get the heads up, you know, and they're going to immediately, what are they going to dump it into? They're going to dump it into Bitcoin. So when there's a run on Tether, it can spike the price of Bitcoin. I actually don't think that Tether gets printed out of nowhere. So I haven't really been a big fan of that conspiracy that Tether gets printed and the price of Bitcoin goes up. because the price of Bitcoin certainly went down in 2018 and Tether was still being printed. So I'm not it's interesting. I think in the future Tether will go away. Like it's not necessary for the system.
Okay, any more questions? No?
All right, excellent. Thank you so much.